And I said, honey, I put the hoe in holy water, and oh! Hi there, sorry about that, didn't see ya. Welcome back to another Cold Blood and Cocktails. As you beautiful people know, any tiff you may have, please cast it away because this is a channel of positive energy, okay? Thank you. I say positive energy as I'm literally dressed as a demonic nun. Anyways, my little delicious creamy noodles, how you doing today? I hope wherever you're at in the world, you're having a great day so far. I myself am doing pretty good. I finally got some sun, so that's nice. No, but I do like this costume. Looks like I'm all hunched over, but I promise I'm not. There's no way to make this look sexy. There we go, maybe like a little off the shoulder moment. There is like a full garb to this, but holy shit on a cracker, it's hot in here. Is she wearing pants? Probably not. So I'm a scary nun up here and maybe a naughty nun down there. And before we get too far into this, cheers to you. Today's drink was supposed to be a crazy nun, which is equal parts tequila and anisette, and when I tried that, it was fucking disgusting. So instead I have an electrolyte drink and there's like a chunk of some shit floating around. What the hell? Okay, cheers to you. Gotta stay hydrated. Okay, I do just have to say this story is about a religious figure, which can be a bit touchy, but whatever you believe, you do you as long as you're not hurting people, baby, okay? But please don't let the fact that this woman and her cronies were dressed as religious figures fool ya. What Mariam believed was not religion, as you'll see. I think she was a little bit of a poser, and she definitely was hurting people. As we all know, as long as pretty much anything has existed, there's been abuse of it. Money, power, religion, the price of avocados, you name it. Well, today's case has a level of abuse that's fucking psychotic. I mean, like, hundreds of people died, bitch. So don't come for me, I'm not attacking anybody's religion, and of course, we will remain respectfully sassy. Like a good margarita, my case stories are best taken with grains of salt. So, we're gonna bring this shit stick all the way back to the early 1900s in Greece. I was just there and everyone was fucking lovely, so I don't know who the hell this lady thought she was. But at this point in time, I guess fraud, murder, and lies weren't yet on the mind of a 23-year-old girl named Mariam Soulakiotis? Soulakiotis, I think that's how you say that, maybe. It's all Greek to me. For the past several years, she'd been working as a helper in factories and on farms to help earn the family extra money. They'd been very poor, and even with her extra money, life just wasn't good. Government Velveeta cheese was a treat for the family, like things were rough, mama. One gloomy and rainy day, Mariam just happened to be introduced to an elder monk named Father Matthew, and she quite liked the way his incense was swinging, if you catch my drift. Mariam and Matthew really couldn't have met at a more perfect time, too. She was in a rut, so was he. He'd been having a few doubts regarding the integrity of the church that he was leading, and wasn't quite sure if he wanted to quit that and become an encyclopedia salesman or stay. Mariam was like, look here, Father Cutie, you don't have to do either of those. Why don't you start your own new religion? Like, duh. He was like, well, hot damn, mama, now that's an idea. So that's exactly what he did. He even built a custom convent and monastery for his future followers. Like, how sweet, right? Mariam was moister than a ramen bowl over Matthew, and when he invited her to join him on his future endeavors, she about shot through the roof like a fire hose. She said, hell to the yes, I'll join you, so she left her family to fend for themselves and started her new life at the convent. Sadly, though, Father Matthew, with his older age, wasn't feeling too hot, and so she almost immediately had to step her kitty up and take over for him. And she climbed them ranks faster than Jane Fonda on a stair-stepper, too. We love ambition. She started out as the finger food placer after the service, then the topic coordinator, and then she was manager of the monastery. Until finally she was the abbess, which I had no idea what that was. I thought that was Who Sang Dancing Queen. But turns out it's pretty much the head nanny bunny. She decided her job was to recruit new members for the convent, and in a timely manner too, because poor Father Matt was headed out the door to those pearly gates. She just wanted him to see his dream fully realized before he two-stepped onto his next adventure, and Mama Mariam hustled too. So hard, in fact, that even her church members were like, damn, you're kind of ruthless. And she'd just sit back with her cigarillo, take a sip of her holy water and her hip flask, paint on her French tips, and be like, yeah, baby, I know. But it wasn't really a compliment because a lot of people felt pushed into the convent just for her to make her numbers. Think like used car salesman vibes in a habit with a little bit less 5 o'clock shadow. That was Mariam in a nutshell. But at this point, the new sect was growing, which Mariam thought was just spiffy. After all, Father Matthew had built this convent for 2 reasons. One, of course, which was to express their religious beliefs, but second, and seemingly most important, was to get money to fund their new movement. Mariam was now given the name Mother Superior Mariam, or Mama Super behind closed doors. Like she'd always tell everyone, if you be good to Mama, Mama blesses you. Poor Father Matthew was almost 80 and he had quit the convent to commit his life to kind of torturing himself to show his dedication to whoever the fuck he worshipped. I shit you not, this little 80-year-old man would strap big heavy chains to his body to carry around and would go 40 days without eating and voluntarily live in a sleep deprivation camp. Like, my goodness, I'm happy if you're you're happy, but how could that bring joy to anyone? Fuck, he should be retired in Santorini eating lemon ice and gelato for breakfast and telling kids to get off his rock lawn. But no, he was happy as a loon, whipping himself like a self-torturing dominatrix. Whatever floats your boat, big boy. Anyways, while he was off getting hot pokers to the nips, Mariam was trying to hide her newly grown devil tail underneath her garb. With her new promotion as Mama Superior, she basically had free reign on the finances, and that new car and pool house wasn't gonna buy itself. And she'd have that new sailboat paid for pretty quickly too, because all new members were required to take a vow of poverty, and this meant that all their savings accounts were emptied and dumped straight into the church's tax-free account. Well damn, after like 10 or 15 people joined, not only did she have the pool house, sailboat, and car paid off, she could finally buy that diamond-encrusted girdle she'd always wanted. Which was perfect because she just had the waistline of her habit taken in, like gotta look good for the newcomers. One day, a lovely couple was walking back from the grocery store and they saw this lady in a habit handing out colorful flyers to what they assumed was for a day spa. They took one and it said, "True happiness is a prayer away," and they were like, huh, they'd recently lost their child in a terrible, tragic accident, and they really hadn't been the same since. The wife was looking for something more out of life. She felt emptier than the bottles that now lined their kitchen floor. The husband was drinking more vodka than water, and don't even ask the last time they'd touched naughty bits. Something about this woman with these flyers felt comforting, like a warm hug from your grandma or the pool water around you after peeing in it. Yes, they were a bit taken aback by her cinched waist and expensive-looking manicure, but maybe this was just what they needed. A new and simpler life. They themselves were not religious at all, but after talking to the woman, it sounded like they were pretty accepting of everyone, no matter their domination, their gender, their color. They didn't discriminate. Ooh, thinks the couple, and they were like, well, sister, mother, mama, where the hell do we sign up? So she gives them the waiver with itty-bitty writing, much too small to see without a microscope like on fucking Willy Wonka. But this was a nun, like why the fuck would she be lying to them or hiding anything? So on the dotted line they sign, and into the black cab they go, immediately leaving all of their belongings and old lives behind. The couple arrives at the convent and they're immediately separated. No biggie. Assured that they'll be able to see each other again soon, they're stripped of their clothing down to their dainties. They were handed thin, scratchy burlap robes and were told to begin praying in their rooms. 15 hours later, when they were still on their knees praying, now exhausted and hungry, they started to think, my goodness, this isn't quite what was on the pamphlet. There isn't a single jacuzzi tub and I've yet to see a bidet anywhere. But they were locked into this new life tighter than Mariam's custom shapewear. Mariam did not stop there with her rules. Not only did you have to be a broke bitch, you had to be a quiet one too. Which means shut the hell up about the lack of mimosas, Janine. Mariam also told everyone that in order to rid themselves of evil and show commitment to their belief in this new church and way of life, everyone had to confess their deepest, darkest secrets to her fast for weeks and not say a single word for a whole fucking month. Bitch, I'd be opening a box of Triscuits within like 45 minutes. But if you're familiar with religion, these actually are common practices, but not to the extreme that Mariam took it to. Like this information that she was getting from them when they'd confess, you know, their dirty little deeds. Well, that shit could now be used as blackmail against them if they ever wanted to leave the convent. And if the members didn't pay up immediately or if their checks bounced, Mariam would begin her holy methods, which were just torture tactics. The newcomers would be asleep and Mariam would wake them up every 10 minutes with a loud bell until their money went through. I ain't gonna sleep cause of y'all ain't gonna sleep cause of me. And if the sleep deprivation wasn't enough to fuck a brother up, she'd also deprive them of anything to drink, only allowing like a cap full of water every few days. So simply because the money wasn't in her bank account yet, they'd become exhausted, weakened, dehydrated, and starved. So it really sucked for the people who came in on a Friday and had to wait the weekend plus 3 to 5 business days for the money to clear. One day, Mariam took a couple that had just joined and locked them in a dark room for the entire week. Each night, she'd tie them to their metal cots and pour water over their faces to cleanse them of whatever impurities they had, which I'm pretty sure is also called waterboarding. But this wasn't enough, thought Mariam. We need more. If 2 weeks of sleep deprivation didn't make the money clear faster, every 4 hours, the new members would be flogged or whipped. Father Matthew was like, oh, I could take their place if you want, and Mariam was like, step back, old man. And this was all in the name of whoever the fuck they were worshiping, of course, and by this time, I don't think even the followers knew who that was. Meanwhile, Father Matthew's body was finally catching up to all the beatings. He couldn't carry as many chains lately, and it seemed like he'd soon be off to the next life. At this point, it was 1950, and he'd taken up residency at the convent again, and it certainly wasn't for the nightly dinner of mushed peas and soggy bread. No Michelin stars here. No, poor Matthew was on his deathbed and under the strict care of Mariam. Of course, when he had left the first time, this was a happy, peaceful place full of love and all that good shit. It wasn't until he was there on his deathbed that he'd realized Mariam had turned this into a fucking concentration camp. She did show a little mercy for Matthew, though. After all, he was the OG leader, and everything she had wouldn't have been possible if not for him. So she gave him an actual mattress versus the newspaper everyone else got, like freaking parakeets. How sweet, right? But not a soul was allowed in his room. No relatives, no friends, and there was no need for a priest because she was holy enough, damn it. Well, one day, as Matthew was approaching his death, a fellow bishop had somehow made his way into Matthew's Matthew's room, and Father Matthew could barely talk what with all the medication Mariam had him on. But the instant Matthew saw the bishop come in, he mustered up every ounce of energy that he had. He sat up and started professing what Mariam was doing, or at least attempting to. The poor bloke didn't say an audible word, and shortly after his outburst, Mariam and a gaggle of nuns came in and demanded that the bishop leave. And 2 days later, Matthew died, which was a day of grieving for everyone, except Mariam. I mean, she was sad because she did like Matthew, but now she thought she was Queen Poopah, High Priestess of Pussy Power, and with Matthew gone, she actually was. Every bit of power was left to her. But it was a win-lose kind of game. She won the power, but that meant she had to change her robes. Because she was the highest thing next to Wonder Bread and whoever the fuck they prayed to, she now had to wear a headpiece that covered her forehead and eyebrows and chafed the shit out of her chin. But no problem for her, because with the funding just pouring in, she could just order some chin cream from Paris. No more chafed chin for her, and her diamond girdle collection was multiplying like lice. What goes up must come down, though, and after about a year after Matthew died, business was at an all-time low. By this time, she had quite a few live-in loyal followers who hadn't been tortured and were in on her scheme. She calls these monks and nuns into a meeting and says, "Look here, everyone have a Jack and Coke and let's think of a new plan. My Invisalign isn't gonna pay for itself and numbers are down." She says, "Okay, now monk daddies, you're gonna go out maybe with a few spritz of cologne and find widows, gullible families, and spinsters. You can lure them in and get them to join. In fact, if we go to the west end of town, that's where all the stylish gays and rich-ass people are. Money!" This was like kids planning out their Halloween candy route, except they were con artists in robes. So the men went out to lure anyone and everyone, and bitch, it worked. The nuns, meanwhile, were out there a tad bit more scantily clothed to lure in wealthy men. Maybe a peep of a stiletto and garter underneath their robe, anything to make a man's tail wag. And nobody said a freaking peep, one, because everyone was brainwashed, and two, because even if they tried to leave, remember, Mariam knew all of their deepest, darkest secrets that she could easily make public. Y'all, you will never guess how much loot they made. They had accumulated over 300 homes and farms all over Greece, plus all the jewels and finances from everyone that lived in the houses. But seriously, fuck that, because all the people that lived in those houses were now being tortured and held hostage. One heiress arrived at the convent in a fur jacket with like $10,000 worth of jewelry, thinking this was some religious retreat where she could buy a spot into a good afterlife. She was greeted with a warm welcome, stripped of her gold, which of course would be held in a safe place until she was ready to go home, aka liquefied and turned into a tooth grill for Mariam, which, speaking of teeth, this look makes my teeth look yellow as shit. The heiress confessed her deepest, darkest sins, all the family murders they'd covered up, the cheating famous cousins, the loveless marriages. Oh, it felt so good to get all this off her chest, knowing everything was gonna be kept a secret. She knew she'd go home after this retreat feeling like a brand new woman. Well, after about an hour, she was taken to her room and was rather confused when they passed what seemed to be cells with people screaming and crying in pain. She's thinking, maybe those are the waxing stations? Yeah, that makes sense. She was led to the last cell and was like, what the hell is this? Where's the mineral water? Well, Lil Mama was kept in isolation and tortured non-stop until she surrendered her bank account with almost $1 million in it. What a fucking weekend, right? Shit. And she thinks she's going home? Hell no, not when there's still a safety deposit box Mariam would need the info for. Instantly, Mariam drained the woman's bank account and left her tied to a bed of wooden spikes in hopes of getting the deposit box information. For weeks, the woman was tortured alongside dozens of other victims at the same time, until finally the poor lady gave in. Mariam had taken everything the woman had, right down to the furs she came in with. Fortunately, though, she was somehow set free and ran home in nothing but her skivvies. A few days later, the woman's daughter thought, well, this is odd. Mom's staying in a cheap motel and having just a glass of water and sucking a stone for breakfast. Like, where's the smoked ostrich and caviar in a rooftop lounge? The mom was like, things are just a little tight right now. It's no biggie. To which the daughter said, the fuck? The only thing tight should be your feet inside a pair of overpriced Louboutins. Well, damn if her daughter didn't turn inside out from her ass when she saw her mom's bank account. Empty, in fact, now in the red after charging these motel stays. And what were these notes her mom had gotten saying, we know everything, if you talk you're dead? Like, can we take a suspicious shot for those? Oh my god, I forgot suspicious shots today. Well, cheers to our first one. This whole fucking story is suspicious. Clearly, someone was trying to blackmail her. And though the mom said this extended religious retreat was a godsend, the best thing since Bisquick biscuits, the daughter was almost certain that the bruises all over her mom weren't from the daily Swedish massages. So the daughter called the police anonymously and said, this sister, Mother Superior, is super suspicious. There is no way my mom would ever give away all of her fortune and belongings willingly unless it was forced out of her. And now that there was a small spotlight on Mariam, it seemed that her little monastery was connected to a lot of missing misters and missies, such as a young 18-year-old gal who had traveled from Ohio to Greece and never came back. The father had contacted the police saying his daughter was lured to this convent by a nun named Mariam. The nun had been to the US to cash in on a humble $10,000 property mysteriously left to the convent and seemed to pick up a few new followers along the way. Word started trickling down the grapevine that investigations were going into this place, and suddenly tons of anonymous reports were coming in regarding extortion, money laundering, false imprisonment, just a big fat bowl of juicy accusations. So on December 4th of 1950, almost 90 officers raided the monastery grounds. With them was a judge, a prosecutor, and a coroner who were all there for almost 24 hours. The nuns and monks had grouped together to hold the door shut, and cops ended up having to use a hydraulic door breaker to get in. This was like a proper fucking cult. Robed bodies were flying left and right, and immediately cops forcibly removed 36 children from the building. A lot of the kids had grown up there. This life was all they knew, so they were pried out of the nuns' arms and put into foster care, which wasn't much better. The police go down one of the holding chamber corridors and find a room full of emaciated and sick, naked, elderly women tied up. And it's not that the food was old, that's literally what they were served to eat, along with garden worms and spoiled veggies. Farther down into the basement, the police find a room with the remains of over 170 bodies. Mariam was accused of aiding in over 150 unnecessary deaths, all people who had been seeking healing from their tuberculosis. God, that's hard to say. Tuberculosis. TB. She'd grant them health in exchange for everything that they had. After their checks would clear, she'd put them all in a room and left them to die praying on their knees. Of course, Mariam had no idea what the fuck to actually do to help these victims, unlike the doctors who were only allowed on site to sign the death certificates. And she'd always used different doctors, so it never seemed suspicious that there were so many people dying at this place. But here's the thing, everyone came voluntarily. And technically, nobody stole the farms and fortunes. Like, everything was clearly transferred to Mariam by the owners, even if their nipples had been cut off moments before the transfer. But at this point, prosecutors didn't know Mariam had been torturing people. It just seemed like a bad sickness had taken over the place and wiped out the community. So nobody could charge her for anything related to money or farms. What the butt fuck, right? She was, however, illegally importing olive oil, so she did get 2 years in prison for that. Wow, so fair, right? Well, don't worry, hell was about to perk its ear up and suck Mariam down. With all the publicity Mariam's case had gotten, people began coming forward with their stories of being tortured at this convent. Reports were pouring in from the survivors showing their battle scars and professing how they barely even made it out alive, all without a single dollar to their name. Suddenly, it made perfect sense to the cops as to why Mariam had such a buttload of money in the bank. And now, with all these people coming forward, they finally had something to work with. Mariam was hauled back out of prison and stood on trial for being an all-around shitty person with her ho-fuckery, for extortion, for illegal detention, for torture and negligent homicide. She was given 10 years alongside her current 2, but then even more evidence came to light. So she had yet another trial, and now she was found guilty of even more illegal detention, and she had 4 years added to her sentence. So like 14 years for millions of dollars and more than 100 deaths? That's pretty fucked up. They ended up finding even more shit on her, but she died with pending cases in 1954. Like, what the fuck was her end game? Was she just gonna retire from the convent and sit pretty? And at what point do you just stop and call it quits? What a bitch. But wasn't this sad? Like, all those people died for nothing. Oh, how awful. She is literally the nun. Anyways, had you heard of this case before? I knew nothing about it, but oh my gosh, it was interesting. The lengths people go. Anyways, there you go. Thank you so much for being here. I love having you. And you know what? If you want just a little bit more me in your life, head over to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Poplux. You get videos a day early. You get Patreon-only content. You get a Patreon-only store. And best part, it's cheap, fun, and fancy, just like me. And don't forget, my latest Repop collection is available at repopcosmetics.com. Comment down below. Let me know what you thought of this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can follow me on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter at OfficialNady, and you can follow me online at thepoplux.com. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all, and I will see you again soon. Bye.